Because of what's happening in our school, the teachers, the media, we need to be out there and we need to speak about that. It's a big climate change crisis in this country and all around the world. So I want to win, and you want to win the next election. So let's go with that policy. A People's Party government will withdraw from the Paris Accord and abandon its unrealistic greenhouse gas emissions targets. Second, stop spending billions of dollars to developing countries to help them reduce their emissions. We can save $2.3 billion doing that. Third, abolish the Liberal government's carbon tax. And fourth, leave it to provincial government to adopt programs to reduce greenhouse gas emissions if they want to. Abolish subsidies for so-called green technology and let private players develop profitable energy efficiency alternatives. Six, invest in mitigation strategies if problems arise as a result of climate change. If. I think it will be very cheap. The last one, focus its efforts on adopting practical solutions to make Canada's air, water, and soil cleaner, where we can have a concrete and direct impact instead of fighting a hypothetical that's the word, climate danger. You know, I like competition, I like free markets, I like competition, but I'm very sure that I won't have any competition on that platform from the other leaders. And yes, let's start the debate in Canada about climate change. And we are able to do that. That's why I'm asking you to read Patrick Moore's book, Dr. Patrick Moore, and you will have all the facts, and we will have a copy of his presentation on our website, People's Party of Canada. That's important. I will need you because we have a lot of work to do, but we'll do that together. So we can speak about it, and we'll speak about it with conviction, and also we'll be honest with the population. We're not like Justin Trudeau telling people that, you know, with a carbon tax of $28 a ton, he is saying to Canadians that he will achieve the Paris Accord targets. And everybody knows that he cannot do that. But also he's saying to Canadians that he will save the world. And as you know, the global, our emission represent only 1.6% of the global emissions. So it's a lie, and we won't go there. Same thing with Andrew Scheer. He's too afraid of the media and too afraid to tell the truth. So for him, he will have a policy on climate change, and I can tell you what will be the policy. He won't impose a carbon tax, that's okay, but he will impose more regulation on businesses, and also he will give subsidies to some business to fight climate change. So that will have a cost for us. We won't go there. But the first thing that is more important, we must explain to Canadians why the Paris Accord, it's an agreement that is non-binding. And so all the other countries that are doing a lot of emissions, CO2 emissions, they won't be able also to respect their commitment to the Paris Accord. So let's have a true and a good discussion on climate change, and I think we can win it. I think, like I like to say, that we are speaking not to the emotion of Canadians, but we are speaking to them, to their intelligence. And that's what I like in politics. That's why we're doing politics differently. So I count on you. We'll have a nice discussion with Canadians, and we will be able to make a difference. So thank you very much. That would be our policy. And now I want to, Patrick, if you can come on stage, we'll have a short discussion. The most important after that, Patrick and I will answer some of your questions. Thank you. Patrick. So, I was listening to you. For me, it was not new because, like I said, I've read his book, but very interesting. And my fear is the main media. As you know, we have a policy now, the People's Party of Canada, and we'll be able to answer questions about climate change. But what is your best advice for our candidates and for me to be successful in that fight against the mainstream media on climate change?
Very difficult.
Is it on?
I'm not sure.
I'll take mine.
I'll turn this on. Someone gave it to me, so I thought it was on.
Let's try that.
Now it's on.
Yeah.
I think that's possibly the most difficult question I've been asked for quite a while. Because, at least in the States, there's Fox. I have to admit I watch it because it's the only one that actually has a balanced approach to anything. And here we have nothing like that. We have a few talk radios, Mr. Green, Danielle in Alberta, who else can I think of? There's others, but they're few and far between. And nothing in BC. I haven't been interviewed in BC for years. Their approach is to ignore what they don't want to hear. They just ignore it, like it doesn't exist. And that means it doesn't exist to the general public. So I think this is one of the most difficult aspects of communications to the Canadian public that you could ever imagine. So, short of lighting yourself on fire, it's hard to get news from this side of the argument. I think I'm pretty good at explaining this stuff, but they just don't even bother giving me the opportunity. So that is some kind of totalitarianism of the mind, and it is here in this country. So I would say the I Ching is a Chinese book in which you throw some sticks and get different patterns, and then you look at your reading. One of the most important readings in the I Ching is Perseverance Furthers. And I've followed that concept all my life. You just keep on trucking. You just keep on trying. Because if you quit, you will fail. So the only possible way to win is to persevere. And if you persevere, as I've noticed sometimes in my life, you actually break through. And I see glimmers of hope here and there in the ability to reach through to the masses, or whatever you want to call the general public, great unwashed, general people out there, you can maybe. What you're doing, Max, is a wonderful thing because very few people could or would do it. You obviously have found a space there for bringing out your understanding. I'm so pleased it is someone from the French-speaking part, because I've felt alienation from not just Quebec, but Ontario too, all my life being a British Columbian. Like, someone described Canada the other day as a road from Ottawa to Montreal and back again. And so we do have this problem to deal with in our republic, or whatever, dominion, or whatever we are. The problem of, the traditional problem of Canada has been if Ontario and Quebec agree on anything, the rest of us are chopped liver. And I think that's got the chance of changing. But this whole idea of breaking through the mainstream media, when you've got nothing as a major national alternative, like they actually do in the States, is one of the biggest challenges you have to face. I'm sure you know that already. So I'm sorry not to have much good advice, but that's my analysis.
That's a good advice, and I think, yes, thanks, Patrick. And I think in 2019, we have the social media. Like Patrick said, there can be bad things on social media, fake news, but also good things. And we must use social media, that's the only thing that we can use. But also we must be on national media. And my advice to you as a candidate and to us, we must not act like scientists. We're not. I'm a politician, and the candidates here, you'll be politicians. We're not scientists, so we cannot claim that we know everything concerning the science, because we will lose credibility. So what we must say, we must quote people like Patrick and scientists like Patrick. We must know them and use their knowledge at our advantage. And when you're going to have 2 or 3 or 5 scientists that you know their position and you'll be able to quote, they will look at you, oh, it's supposed to be a huge consensus. And they're using the word consensus because they don't want to have debates. And if we're able to show to the population that there's another side, that will help us. But the danger for us is to act like a scientist, and we are not. That's why I asked Glenn if it would be possible to have Dr. Patrick Moore with us and having this presentation. It is so important for our party and so important for our success. And I'll do it, and I will need you to do it, but also we need to be out there on social media. And the more we speak, like you said, I believe in that, the more people will understand, and we just have to create a doubt in their mind. That's the only thing we have to do. And after that, Canadians will go and they will read. They will go on social media, they will read. And so I like all your arguments that you said today. It's very simple. But we don't have the same credibility. We don't have his credibility. So we must pay attention to that. And that's why it is our job to be well informed. And we'll do that. We'll have a convention the 17th and 18th of August. We'll have discussion about that. But on our website, we'll have all the arguments there, and we'll have all the important quotes from scientists. And that will help us to speak about what we believe. I think with your help, that would be important.
You brought up a very important point here, and that is the word consensus. You are told that there's an overwhelming consensus. They say 97%, which is just a stupid number they plucked out of the air and perpetuated. It's a ridiculous thing. There's 2 questions here. Is there really a 97% agreement among scientists that humans are the main cause of climate change and it's a catastrophe? Because you see, there's three elements to this. It's like an onion in a way. First, is there climate change? Of course. Second, are humans the main cause? Very unlikely, because it's been happening all through the history of 500 million years and more. Second, is it dangerous or catastrophic? No, is the total answer to that, because there's nothing happening that is out of the ordinary. We're just getting storms and rain and droughts and normal things which have been happening for 10,000 years. So consensus though, then you come to the question of, well, what if there is a consensus among scientists? This word is not a science word. Consensus is a political word. Consensus, you see, policy, which is politics, is about decisions. Science is about facts, truth. Facts are different from decisions. Decisions are made on the basis of good facts, if you're lucky. You can make good policy from good facts. You can't make good policy from bad facts. You can even make bad policy from good facts if idiots are in charge. But remember, do not ever let anybody tell you there's a consensus in science, because Galileo, Darwin, Mendel, Einstein, just to name 4 of the most important scientists, had to fight against a false consensus for decades or even until they died. And they were one person. When Einstein, who was a clerk in a patent office in Austria, published the theory of relativity, 100 prominent scientists, way more important than him, published a critique of his theory saying he was wrong. Einstein was asked by a journalist, "What do you think of this? 100 of your colleagues have declared that you are wrong." He said, "Why 100? It only takes one." And this is the principle. Science has nothing to do with how many people agree on something. That's politics. Politics, democracy, is about majority rule and consensus. It only makes sense, because that's because people have taken the facts as they know them to be and decided that those facts make more sense to have this policy. Whereas the facts themselves have nothing to do with opinion. They only have to do with whether they are true or not. And so, policy is informed by facts, but consensus is not allowed to be in science. And they are fooling everybody by saying that it matters that even if 97% of scientists agreed on this climate catastrophe, that it would matter. It doesn't. They could all be wrong, easy, like have been in the past, many times, on important issues. But the 97% is a total myth to begin with. Many papers have been written analyzing the analysis that was done to reach the 97%. And if you look at the various parameters from what these scientists say, are they saying that climate change is happening? Probably yes. Are they saying humans are the main contribution? No, not anywhere near always. Some of them admit that probably humans have some contribution, but they don't say it's the most important contribution. And in the final analysis, are they saying it's dangerous? Almost none say this in a science paper, because that is some kind of future prediction that very few scientists are going to go on to that. So when it comes down to it, you know how many papers in this 11,000 papers fit that humans are the main cause and it's dangerous? 3%. Not 97%, the exact opposite of 97%. 3%. So they put that argument out to shut you down right at the beginning. Because why would you argue with 97% of world scientists being in favor of this idea that we're causing catastrophic climate change? It's a lie to begin with, and even if it was true, it wouldn't matter one bit. That's the truth.
I think you're right about consensus. In science, it is not, they don't use that word. But us, at the People's Party, in politics, we don't use consensus also. I like to quote Margaret Thatcher. When she became Prime Minister for the first term, she did an interview, and you can Google that, and you see that on YouTube, Margaret Thatcher speeches. And she did an interview. And the journalist asked her, you were not ready to do any consensus with your opponent. She said, I'm not in politics to do consensus. I won't use that word. I don't like to make a consensus and do a consensus on my belief, on my principle. Speak to me about conviction, about principle, not about consensus. You know, we people in England, UK, we have the best ideas. You don't do any consensus with the best ideas and the best policies for our country. So I'm a politician that is doing politics based on conviction. And that's what we want to do. That's why we're doing politics differently. You don't like the word consensus, Patrick. I don't like the word consensus. Because when you have the best ideas, there's no consensus. When you believe in people and you don't believe in big fat government, when you believe in freedom and personal responsibility, that are the basis of our civilization, Western civilization, and the basis of the capitalist system that is the best system that creates wealth and growth and prosperity, you don't do any consensus on your principle. That's why I decided to quit the Conservative Party of Canada. They're supposed to be free markets, but they approve a socialist system for dairy, poultry, and eggs. So no consensus for us.
I don't argue with that.
So, thank you, because you are giving us, Patrick, some tips and ideas how to argue with journalists and our opponent. But also, I will tell you, and sometimes I'm doing that mistake. When you're doing an interview with a journalist, a leftist journalist, 97% of them.
You did a study.
Yeah, I did a study. So, when you're doing an interview with a journalist, the first reflex for you as a human being, you're speaking to that person. You want to have a nice conversation with that person. And you try to be kind with the person who is asking you some questions. But you're not speaking with that journalist. You're speaking to people in their house. You're speaking to all the viewers that are listening and that conversation. So don't hesitate to argue with that person, because that's important. Don't be too kind when they're going to start and telling you there's a consensus, like you said. Jump on it. Be in their face. And you know, people, they will look at it. Viewers, they will look at it. I'm not speaking to that person. I'm speaking to the people who are listening to our conversation. So it's important. And you try to be kind, but you have to be polite. But you have to, each time that when they start, there's a consensus, you must be out there. What do you mean? You cannot have a consensus on science. It's true or it is not true. So like Patrick just said, and you try to be on your turf and controlling the discussion. So we will do some practice like that during our meeting in Ottawa at our training conference. That's important. But, you know, it's good what we are doing. And it can be tough. Yes. But at the end, that's why, you know, it's a good time for us. It's a good time. I think the population, they're ready for a new way of doing politics. And the journalists right now, they don't have the same credibility that they have 25 years ago or 30 years ago. They're not so credible. So let's argue with them and don't take their assumption as facts. And that will be important in the discussion. And that's why we need to have all our arguments in our mind and being ready for arguing with them. And that's why Lauraline was so good in the by-election in Burnaby South, in the debates. She was arguing and she was on their face, and people liked it. Oh yes, that's true. Because what we were saying that by conviction and passion, and people can feel it and they can understand that. So I think that's our arguments, and we must be out there, but we must do our own work and read and listen and questioning and being with people like Patrick and reading the stuff to be ready. It's a fight. It will be a fight. We must be ready for an intellectual fight. That's so important for the future of our country. And I'm very pleased that we're not alone here. We are there, and we will have candidates everywhere that will help us to do that fight. And so I don't know, Patrick, if you have other arguments that we can use, that we can counter arguments when we have a discussion with leftist journalists.
Well, you just reaffirmed so much of what I believe about how you have to behave. If you will look on the internet and see my testimony just 2 days ago before the U.S. Natural Resources Committee on this story about 1 million extinctions. Afterwards, you know, I'm one of these, I was just on with Mike Huckabee too for 15 minutes on his weekly show, and I got a really good interview there, so you should look at that to see the style of interview. It's the same exactly what you're saying. You have to come back good and hard. You have to know what you're talking about. You have to hit them back, because if the public sees you as being capable of countering effectively, that gives them strength, it gives them spirit. They can see that you've got the bit in your teeth. They can see that you're not going to shrink like a violet. You know, you're going to argue this, and you're going to stick to your ground. Stick to your guns, as they say. So that's the key, what you just said. You're very wise.
I'm not a scientist.
It's
I'm not so wise.
Science is about knowledge, not about wisdom. And I know that at my great old age, I have also garnered some bit of wisdom through life. But what you're saying is very, very true. You have to show strong internal fortitude for the debate. But you can't do that unless you're informed properly. So I hope I've helped you with that a bit tonight, because that's why I exist.